So our joint Margaret Noble Address, Armin Spitz Memorial Lecture, and SEPA, GPPA, RUMPA, PPA, and SWAP keynote speaker is Dr. David Hurd. After earning a Bachelor's of Science in Geology from Iowa State University in 1984, David Hurd continued his education with a Master's of Science and Science Education from the University of Nebraska in 1991, and a Doctor of Philosophy and Education from Cleveland State University in 1997. Prior to coming to Edinburgh University in 1992, he taught geology, astronomy, meteorology, physics, and chemistry at both the college and high school levels. With his trademark high energy and inquiry-based pedagogy, Dr. Hurd has gained a reputation as one of the region's most engaging professors. A two-time recipient of the Educator of the Year Award at Edinburgh University, Hurd is consistently nominated for a multitude of awards by his students. In addition, his contributions in the classroom, Dr. Hurd manages the Edinburgh University Planetarium and provides the local community with interactive and engaging live planetarium programs. The planetarium has received national recognition for his inclusion of all learners in STEM objectives. Considered a pioneer in the field, he has dedicated the last 18 years to producing and implementing tactile astronomy materials for the blind and has facilitated workshops on teaching astronomy to the visually impaired. His recent book, Getting a Feel for Eclipses, highlighted the 2017 total solar eclipse and will be modified for the upcoming eclipses in South America and again in the United States. So if you have that book, hang on to it. There's a page that'll slip in the back. Other tactile books under development in conjunction with NASA include books on small bodies and ocean worlds in the solar system. And it is with great pleasure to introduce to you Dr. David Hurd.
Wow, that guy sounded really impressive. And I put my talk in the conference agenda, so if I start reading paper abstracts randomly, just smile and wave, okay? So we'll get started. So I do want to acknowledge my Edinburgh University gang, and they're here, and my wife, Lavina, and also Ken Murphy for all of their support and helping making me the planetarian I am today. But I'd also like to acknowledge Roger Sargent. He can't be here with us today. We all know the Rogers in our lives, don't we? The man or woman who impacts us on a regular basis and makes us better at what we do. The one who doesn't have a background in planetarium management or even formal education, but adds to our success by their sheer passion and involvement with our programs. Roger works for the athletic department at Edinburgh University in grounds. And during the day, he can be found washing uniforms for athletes or painting lines on fields. But he has a zest for learning and helping in the planetarium. And he had a hand in guiding me in the development of this talk. Well, it's a great privilege to stand here before my colleagues and friends. I recall getting a phone message from Anna regarding the upcoming conference, and I was just sure that she wanted me to do a paper or a workshop on working with special needs visitors. And I just thought maybe she wanted me to help out with the cause, the cause of the planetarian convention here. And I was pretty busy, so can you imagine that, a planetarian too busy to get back with Anna Green? I mean, but man. So then she decided to call, and she decided to ask me straight up in an email if I would deliver the Noble Spitz lecture. As many of past lecturers can attest, at first I thought she might be joking. But after realizing she was in a state of panic, to find someone naive enough to take her up on it, I accepted, noting that I was humbled, honored, and petrified. Now, remember those 3 words because I'm going to come back to them, okay? So don't forget those. So anyway, so here we are today, and even today, I sought out Gary Tomlinson's advice. Where's Gary? Since he's had so much experience with conferences. So I asked him, I said, Gary, how do I even start? And what do I do tonight? He said, oh, that's easy. Just start by thanking all the important people that made it possible for you to be here. And I said, well, I really don't know all the key players and all the regionals, and I was wondering if you could put the list together for me in order of importance. So Gary was kind enough to put a list together for me, so thank you, Gary Tomlinson, for doing that for me. I appreciate it. I haven't even looked at the list yet, so I apologize. If I'm mispronouncing any of your names, I do apologize. In order of importance, let's see, number 1, Gary Tomlinson. Number 2, GT. Okay. Number 3, Gary Tomlinson. Forget it. Okay. No, seriously, the first one I looked to for advice was Dale Smith. So I called him in a panic, and I said, hey, I've got to do this talk. Would you mind helping? He said, sure, I'll help you out. Just send me $50, and I'd be happy to write that paper for you. So I sent Dale $50, and about a week later, a package arrived in the mail. And I said, oh, man, this is exciting. So I got it out, and I thought to myself, I can't wait to read my speech. So I started to read it, and wow, it was really good. But as I read on, I was like, wait a minute. This sounds vaguely familiar. And what's going on here? So as I started to dig into the archives, I discovered that it was the same talk he delivered in 2002 in Wisconsin. The names were changed to protect the innocent, however. All right. Anyway, okay, back to being humbled, honored, and petrified. Point number 1. I am so humbled to be in this profession. Have you ever stopped to realize that we carry on a trade that has gone on since the beginning of our existence? Have you ever pondered the fact that before most, if not all, people groups had a written language, they were mapping the stars, planets, and intricacies of the moon and sun and recording them chiseled in rock or using larger structures that enabled ancient cultures to record significant natural events? To me, that's humbling. Or what about the myriad of times 5th graders have asked me a great question that I only skirt about the edges with? I know that hasn't happened to any of you, right? Why does mass cause gravity? What's outside the universe? Or are there vampires in here? Oops, wait a minute. That's the kind of questions Ken Murphy gets. Yeah, from his. I'm also humbled to be here with you. You are my friends, truly my friends, my colleagues, and my first reaction to doing this talk was, nuts! I can't wow them with some cool astronomical stuff or wax eloquently, or more likely wane pathetically, about an upcoming astronomical event or fact, or even hide behind a council in a dark dome, all while magically maneuvering my guests through a tour of their backyard in my planetarium. Besides, if I picked an astronomical topic, over half of you would know 10 times more on the subject than I do, and the other half would be too humble to let me know I got it wrong. First slide, please. Yeah. Turn it off before this side sees it. Oh my goodness, that's embarrassing. It's upset. Wow. Okay, we'll pretend that didn't happen. These talks are themselves very humbling, especially when you must deliver one. And I don't know about you, but I need these talks. Once a year, I need to be energized. I need a pep talk, and that's what I feel like I get when I go to one of these lectures. I get encouraged, I get challenged, and I need that. So I'm not going to bring to you anything new today or anything that you say, wow, I never knew that. But what I hope to do is encourage you and hope to challenge you. For some of you, this is a pep talk, and I'm just saying, keep up the good work. All right? Keep on it. Keep out on the long haul. For others, myself included, it's, come on, we can do better. We need to get back to our first love. Maybe you've lost that showtime mentality. Well, you got to catch it again. You just got to do it. You got to say to yourself, you know what? I'm not going to let 40 kindergartners in here today with their glow shoes ablazing get me down. I'm going to introduce them to the wonder of our place in space. And what an opportunity we have to tell others we come into contact with that we work in a planetarium. In my mind, being a professor is secondary. I run a planetarium. I just have to be a professor so I get a paycheck. But I run a planetarium. When I'm out and about, I run a planetarium. After all, the planetarium's not a room. It's a magical place, so make it a magical place. True story, one of which my secretary reminds me of often. I remember not long ago, a student was wandering out in the hall during the first day of class. And I happened to be out in the hall at the same time, and she came up and asked me, "Where's Cooper Hall 161? "I don't know. Let's go find it," I replied with my best professorial voice. After searching for about 2 minutes, we ran into my secretary, who was also guiding students who were wandering aimlessly on that first day of class. And so we asked my secretary, "Where's room 161? A puzzled look came across her face as she looked at me, expecting me to finish the punchline. But then she realized I was asking a legitimate question. She laughed politely and told the student and me she would show us to room 161. Down the familiar hall we trod. Boy, had I been a good Boy Scout doing a good deed for the day. Yep. And I was in the act of doing a good deed when she slipped into the museum and pointed to the planetarium door. "There's room 161, Cooper Hall, Dr. Hurd." What? I thought, that's not room 161, that's the planetarium. I never knew it was room 161, as the sign behind my floating Earth display so loudly proclaims. It was always the planetarium. For me, the planetarium stands on its own. It's not a room, it's not a room number, it's the planetarium. And there's a respect that comes with the fact that it's a planetarium. And I want you to think about your humble beginnings related to the planetarium field for a moment. Show of hands. How many of you knew you would work in the planetarium community when you first entered college? How many of you knew? Okay. All right. How many of you knew by the time you were a junior in college you would work in the planetarium community? Okay, a few more hands. For how many of you was it not until after you finished college that you discovered you would work with the planetarium community? My hand's up. All right, look around the room. Isn't that crazy? What a journey we are on, and what tales we can tell. Many of you have heard or shared your journey tonight with someone sitting at your table. Toshi Komatsu, who works at the Dianza College Fujitsu Planetarium, was a junior at UC Berkeley when he stumbled upon an ad for a planetarium presenter at the Lawrence Hall of Science, and his path crossed with Alan Gould. Several years later, as a result of Alan's encouragement and arm twisting to attend a WAC meeting in San Diego, Toshi had found a home. Toshi recalls that the WAC conference was an unusually friendly crowd and all too willing to share, encourage, and challenge him to explore many different ways of communicating in the planetarium in an engaging way. Zach Thompson shares a similar journey. At the University of Nebraska as an undergraduate, he reached out to Jack Dunn. Oh boy, there's a mistake. He reached out to Jack. Jack would help guide Zach in his quest to learn all he could about about how a planetarium is operated. In his own words, Zach recalls, "I'll never forget the day I got word I would be the lucky follower to take over the reins at Mueller Planetarium. Now, 3 years later, it's a wonder how so many steps in my life lead me to this time and place, and I never knew it. I am grateful to be living the dream, where it hardly feels like work, to share this love of astronomy with others, to see the wonder in their eyes when they experience a planetarium show or presentation. It's a fulfillment beyond words. I am grateful for what I learned from Jack and what I continue to learn from my new friends and colleagues. This is where I was meant to be." Both Toshi and Zach are the result of planetarium community embracing energetic and creative individuals. And it's noteworthy that both of them expressed how much their regionals made a significant impact on them. Part of my own journey includes cutting my teeth on a Spitz A3P with the original Control Council. I had finished my undergraduate degree and taught junior high physical science for 4 years before finding my first love. It was at the University of Nebraska Kearney campus where I was first introduced to the world of planetariums while working on my master's. My advisor, Dr. Glenn Underhill, told me, mind you, he didn't suggest I would be running the annual Christmas show in the planetarium. "The planetarium?" I exclaimed. "Let's see, that doesn't have the telescope in it, does it?" So one October afternoon, he told me to have a pencil and notepad ready and took me into the planetarium. "I want you to copy this control panel exactly as it's laid out here, and I want you to find out what every knob in this machine does." With that, he turned and walked out. It was sort of dark in there, and it took me a long time to even find where the light switches were. However, at Dr. Underhill's request, I painstakingly took on the task of learning how to operate the planetarium. My first couple of shows, I am certain, were less than stellar. However, making me copy down the control panel and self-discover was one of the best things he could have done for me. I was hooked. It wasn't long before I was scheduling and running the programs on my own. I never did see him in the planetarium after my initiation. In fact, he retired the following spring, probably due to one of his students, me. However, his methodology lives on, as I have countless graduate and undergraduate students who happily, maybe grudgingly, remember their first day on the job when Dr. Hurd made them copy the control panel and find out what the knobs do. Well, I graduated from the A3P in Nebraska to a Vulex Apollo. Huh? How many of you know what I'm talking about there? Vulex Apollo. Yeah. The pull down, it had a pull down metal shelf, and the control panel would just fold out before you. All this was housed in a 20-foot dome of sorts. That was actually another display for other rocks and minerals while the planetarium was not in use at the Kingman Museum of Natural History in Battle Creek, Michigan. From there, I was sent back to the A3P at Edinburgh University of Pennsylvania, where I've been for the last 25 years, and wouldn't trade it for anything. And even though I don't have the latest technology, slide number 2. Wait. Even though, boy, I lost my place on that one. And even though I don't have the latest full dome technology, or full dome at all for that matter, I continue to milk out of the A3P the last bit of starlight in my universe that I only see as growing and expanding as the opportunities unfold before me to enlighten the next generation of explorers. Interesting sidebar, I think that cutting my teeth on the A3P at the University of Nebraska helped me get my job at Edinburgh University, as I walked in and said, hey, I know this projector. I know this control panel. This feels like my backyard. Point number 2. What an honorable profession we have. It's humbling. It's also honoring. What an honorable profession we have. The word honor as a noun has 2 primary meanings. It can either mean high respect or esteem, as in the U.S. regional planetarium associations are regarded with honor among planetarians around the world. Or the word honor can mean a privilege. For example, it is an honor to bring the wonders of our universe to our constituents. It is this latter of meaning of honor of which I speak now as a professional planetarian who has the privilege, pleasure, pride, joy, yes, honor, to be able to do what I do. After all, what other professions allow you to invite your customers into your backyard? So I ask you now, have you lost that first love? If you have, you've forgotten about the honor afforded you to invite others into your backyard. In the book of Revelation in the Bible, the Apostle John records a message Christ wanted to communicate to the church in Ephesus. In that particular letter, Christ commends the church for many things, but ends up with the following rebuke. But I have this against you, that you have left your first love. I believe they didn't lose their first love, but rather left it. That, to me, seems more purposeful and intentional. I don't think some of us have left our first love, but rather some of us, myself included, have lost our first love. The distinction is subtle, but I believe very important. I did not intentionally leave my first love I once had in the planetarium profession, but rather I have allowed other distractions to draw me away from my zeal. Distractions, the mundane, the other responsibilities piled up until the planetarium itself was the distraction. I need to regain that showtime mentality. I admit, I've lost my first love and need to find it again. So let's search for it right here, right now, together. When's the last time you blessed your guests with a trip to the North Pole to visit Santa Claus and the sky he sees? Or better yet, when's the last time when somebody asked, is there a South Star? You said, I don't know. Let's go look for it. But before we go look, how might we determine if they have one in the first place? Let's think about it. Let's talk about it. Let's go exploring right now, right here in your backyard. When's the last time you found the third dipper in the sky called the Milk Dipper? By the way, I was really impressed with that constellation shootout. I was out the first round just sitting there in the chair saying, I'm glad I didn't sign up for that. When was the last time you researched and then pointed out one or two interesting cultural constellations? How about the blubber container and the lampstand, Cassiopeia in Inuit lore? The cat's cradle, Orion in Polynesian lore? Organized group of thieves, the Big Dipper in Macedonian lore? Buffalo embryo, the Hyades in Lakota lore? Or the little plow, three saints, the hatching hen with her chicks, the bright star of the pig? That one sounds like a Steven Spielberg movie too. Jaguar, armadillo, and the list goes on and on. When's the last time when you asked, hey, what's the brightest star in the night sky? And everybody shouted, wait up. Everybody shouted, the North Star, Polaris. Did you say, hey, let's find the North Star? Did you know you can find the North Star this way? And once you found the North Star, said, I wonder if it is the brightest star in the night sky. Let's have a look around. Don't lose your first love. Of course, with my old Spitz A3P, sometimes I think the North Star was the brightest star in the night sky and really couldn't tell the difference. But there's kind of dependent on the position of the star ball. By the way, do you know what A3P stands for? Huh? A3 prime. No, you're mistaken, Mitch. Sorry. It really stands for Adjust and Align Planets. Or maybe since it's not a subscript 3, it stands for Adjust Planet Positions Promptly. Just kidding. Is this mic on? That's a joke. Hello. Okay. Or what about finding your first love even out of the planetarium? When was the last time that you provided your version? This is a bolt sizer. When's the last time, and I give my students this to use, when's the last time you provided your version of a device with various sized holes in it and challenged your students to predict how big the full moon will be at arm's length with one eye closed? Huh? What fun. You know what their predictions will be. And you may have forgotten what their surprise will be when they return to class to report their findings. When was the last time when introducing the concept of AUs did you get a meter's length of adding machine or receipt paper, tell your pupils to imagine the sun at one end and Pluto's orbit at the other end, and challenge them to predict and mark in where the other planets should be? Of course, Pluto's about how far? 39 AUs, right? Pluto's about 39 AUs from the sun, and a meter is just over 39 inches long. You know what their predictions will be. So I ask you to consider, what creative way will you help them find out the truth in the matter? Or what about this? How often do you invite your audience into your backyard, where the temperature's always just right and there's never a cloud in the sky? I know one of our colleagues sitting with us tonight does a great job inviting her guests into her backyard. Yeah. In fact, during a job interview, she accidentally pointed out the wrong stars that make up the summer triangle. After realizing her error, she quickly retorted, "Oh, your backyard is much bigger than my backyard." Well, she got the job, and I know she does a great job inviting her guests into her 40-foot backyard. But I still miss her working in my 30-foot backyard. Thanks, Tiffany. By the way, any of us who've had the privilege to present in someone else's backyard has experienced the angst of being totally lost for a while until you can orientate yourself. Right? Come on, hands. Yeah, mine's up. I will never forget about 20 years, I was at Edinburgh for a little while, and our control panel is in the west. Okay? And that's where we have it set. It's in the west. So when you turn daily forward, how are the stars going to be moving? Hello? Towards you, right? They come towards you. So I don't even remember, is somewhere in Michigan, but this is, so that explains it right there. But no, I went for an interview at a planetarium in Michigan. Their control panel happens to be below the eastern horizon. So I was doing a program, or I was going to impress them with my planetarium skills, and I went in there, and so when I turned daily forward, how are the stars moving? This is broke. You better call Ash and have them come by right away, because we've got a serious problem here. This is broke. It was rough because that was terrible. I did not get the job. Okay. Anyway, the examples and opportunities are boundless to help us find our first love of this profession. And it is conferences like this that enable us to do that through fantastic colleagues who are filled with creative ideas for reaching a wide variety of audiences. Colleagues like Gene Zajac, Jeannie Bishop, Dave DeReamer, and others come to my mind. I am certain you can think of those creative educators in your regional organization, and I encourage you to tap into their brain trust. After all, most of my creative teaching techniques aren't my ideas, they're your ideas. I don't come up with this stuff, you do. I don't invent these ideas, I steal them. You guys make me look good. And then I win awards for being a good professor. I just don't tell them that I steal these great teaching ideas every year from my colleagues from the Planetarium associations in North America. Point number 3. Did I do point number 2 already? I must have. Okay. Point number 1 was humble. Point number 2 was honored. And point number 3, very good, petrified. Yes, being a planetarian is an honor and at times humbling, but it can also be petrifying. Facility closures and cutbacks, dealing with administrations that just don't get it, shows that go bump in the night. Slide number 3. We'll just leave that one up there for a while. Yes, wow. Students or patrons who bring criticism, justified or otherwise, and the list goes on. There's a possibility I could have lost my job on October 1st from Edinburgh University of Pennsylvania. It was an unsettling time, but I was blessed with the fact that I did not. But I often ask myself, if I had, would have I lost my zest for astronomy? Would that flame have died? Would resentment, anger, and bitterness build up in my life instead of, wow, I wonder where I can go, where I can make a difference in the lives of learners and their interest in science and astronomy? Well, you can turn that off now. Thank you. Please. How many of you seen those boxes? They're about like that. They're gray or black. They're called slide projectors. Let's say that together. Slide projectors. Yes. And that's really where planetariums are moving. So just wanted to bring you up to speed there. Okay. All right. Anyway, I am also petrified that at times I might fail. And at times, I've failed epically. After all, how many of you can lay claim to nearly burning down your facility? It was a cold morning, December morning, several years ago, when I was rudely woken by a phone call from my dean. David, you need to get in here immediately and report to me ASAP. The local fire department is on site, and it seems there has been a fire in the planetarium. How can that be, I thought. Who would do such a thing? Was it an act of terrorism? After arriving at the planetarium, I quickly realized that one of my best laid special effects had gotten the better of me. An 18-inch plastic Frosty the Snowman. Perched above one, I disengaged the other 3. Perched above one of the old-style arc lamps that heats to the temperature of the photosphere in a matter of seconds, created the perfect effect for my homemade and improvised Christmas light show. As long as no one tried to use the house lights, the effect was a foolproof plan guaranteed to work flawlessly and delight patrons through the season, as a quick on-off motion would illuminate Frosty to dark-adapted eyes, causing squeals of delight and leaving the indelible image of Frosty the Snowman dancing in their minds. But what about the custodian? Did he not enjoy the effect during his morning vacuuming? Or did he not get the memo that it was to be turned on and off immediately? Maybe the cool glow that lasted for less than a minute and erupted in flames, dancing on my asbestos dome, did not impress him. Needless to say, afterwards, an all-faculty bulletin would come out on email warning all faculty to use extreme caution with any holiday decorations, accompanied with a list of what was permissible and what was not. Although it went out to all faculty, each time I saw that email, an invisible finger would come out of the screen, tap me on the chest to remind me who it was really aimed at. Now, all that remains of the 18-inch tall Frosty is part of the head and top hat fused to the bulb casing, as though our formidable closest star had indeed been the demise of Frosty. I think maybe John Bell should lead us in a Frosty the Snowman song. Where is he here? Or, the Snowman. I shouldn't have asked. Oh, thank you. Wow. Anyway, wow. For about 8 years, the smoke stain arch directly above the mishap on the dome added to the magical ambience at the Edinburgh University Planetarium. During the renovation of Cooper Hall in 2012, about all I got was a painted dome and a sprinkler system that posed quite a dilemma when we installed new LED cove lights in 2014. And I often wonder why the management was all too eager to splurge for the white light LED option to replace my previous house light system. Go figure. Another epic failure was directly related to my work with students who are blind. After all, I am the leading expert in working with blind and visually impaired students in science education. Not. And I am so impressed, not, that a student memorialized me in a poem that was published in a book, which I would like to share with you now, on trying to read a weather station map in Braille at an atmospheric space science review session, April 29th, 2003. In his office I sit, reading the isobars, trying to figure out what they are telling me. What language are these materials in, you ask? It is a frustration, and quite a language she speaks. The professor guides my hand over the humdrum of lines. It all feels the same to me. Why do I not understand this? Perhaps it is the uniformity and unfairness of it all. Perhaps the impatient professor expecting instant progress. Where are they? I give it my all, no progress. Am I doomed to failure? What do these lines mean to me? It is all just another form of calligraphy. I feel the lines again. They are like reading a fortune. What does this loop above the small dot mean? That's nothing, I'm told. Concentrate on the point out yonder fields. Keep trying. That line from the circle curves and points upward to the left, that to the right. Go home and study this further. If I can't figure it out here, how am I supposed to figure this out in my dorm, it being noisy and full of life? What relevance will this have on me 10 years hence? Will it help me build my career taller than a neighboring fence? Perhaps another reading of a poem. The lines converge on one another in my mind. There is nothing in the current project to find. I will continue to try to find the mystery of my task at hand. To hold my own, I must make this stand. That was Ken Bremer, published in Life Lessons Through Poetry, College Life for a Visually Impaired Person in Verse. Ken and I actually had a very good student-teacher relationship, but his frustration in trying to make sense of a pseudo-adiabatic lapse rate chart was the final straw. I mean, I can barely spell pseudo-adiabatic lapse rate chart, let alone try to teach it to a student who's blind. The poem captured his frustration, and although it was a scathing rebuke of my inadequacies, at least I tried. And this made me better at what I do in working with students with disabilities. And often it is in those efforts of trying that we learn to be better deliverers within our practice. After all, I am convinced that we learn more from failures than from successes. In my over 30 years teaching experience, I cannot recall once giving out extra credit points for students giving me right answers during lectures. But I often, almost daily, give out extra credit points for wrong answers that help us understand why we think the way we do and provide a backdoor approach to better understanding. So I want to close with this, and I want you to think not about what you have done for the Planetarium community, but rather think about what the Planetarium community has done for you. Who has been influential in your career? Who was it that inspired you to be doing what you are doing now, and even influencing how you do it? The most influential person for me was Paul Riem, and unfortunately he could not be here with us tonight. I just talked to him about a week ago. Paul was curator of natural history at the Kingman Museum of Natural History in Battle Creek, Michigan. It was amazing to witness him work with children who came to the museum, directing them through experiential learning as a master conductor of a symphony orchestra. But it wasn't his skill with the children that impressed me as much as his showtime mentality. He would often remind us, it's not your day, it's the kids' day. For Paul, when a bus rolled in, it was showtime. In fact, he would shout it out as a bus rolled in up to the museum. It's showtime! With a smile on his face, he would bust out the front door that was guarded by the bull moose standing 10 feet high, a cow and calf. He would bound down the limestone stairs and anxiously await the door of the bus to open. He was one of my biggest influences on how I conduct business. It's showtime, and my audience has arrived. It didn't matter to Paul what other distractions were buzzing around in his head or surrounding, for when the group arrived, it was showtime. But Paul, I was enjoying our gripe session about the administration here. It was too late. He was out the door. But Paul, I was enjoying our conversation about our cramped office space where three of us barely have enough room to get through the door, let alone to our desks. It was too late. He was out the door with a smile on his face. But Paul, you were just telling me how rough it was last night with your wife and kids. It was too late. He was out the door with a smile on his face. It was showtime. So tonight, I challenge you to take root downward and bear fruit upward. For those of you who are all in, keep at it. Keep up the great work. For those of us who need a reminder, find that first love, because no matter where you find yourself tonight, it's showtime. There we go. Thank you.